You're listening to the British Baseball Podcast. And joining me on today's episode of the British Baseball Podcast, a man who doesn't need any introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway. I've got Mr. Paul Vernon. Paul, how are we today?
I'm very well, Matt. Really lovely to be talking to you.
Yeah, well, it's not the first time that we've had face-to-face contact. I had the pleasure of taking part in one of your online training sessions the other week, which was really good. Sorry I missed this Tuesdays, but had other commitments to tend to.
There's always next week, Matt. That's strike one.
Yeah, no, what happens if we get strike three?
No one's got there yet, so we don't know.
No, it was excellent. Really enjoyed it, and it's one of the things that I really love is in training, because I'm still so new to it. Is I'm just picking everything up because everything's really fresh to me. So just being able to do some of the drills that I would do in the field, but being able to do it in my own home. Yeah, super, love it. So yeah, pencil me in for next week.
Excellent.
But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about your good self. So I'll stop my waffling. So Paul, do you want to tell us how you started to get involved in baseball and how your interest first peaked?
In 1992, which is obviously a long time ago, I was looking for a sport to play in the summer. Actually, probably could go back a few years before that. In 1989, I was playing football. I was still playing football at that time, and I broke my ankle playing football. And it was, it was a little bit painful, but not too bad when it happened anyway. But yeah, I was laid up with it in plaster for 6 weeks, and it just happened to be in October. There used to be a channel, sports channel called Screen Sport, and they were covering the World Series live, actually, as it happened. I didn't do all the staying up business. I recorded it on the old VHS recorder, and I'd get up in the morning and sit and watch the games. Or that was the plan anyway. Unfortunately, I think they managed to get a game played, maybe a couple of games played, and then this huge earthquake hit San Francisco. Demolished the bridge. I mean, it was huge. Lots of loss of life, unfortunately. But I watched a lot of earthquake coverage for a couple of days, and then they got back to the World Series, Battle of the Bay, I believe they called it. So it kind of piqued my interest a little bit in baseball. I thought it looked like a decent game to watch and to play. But I didn't really think anything else of it until, like I say, 92. I was thinking of a sport that I could play in the summer, and of course, really, there was only cricket. So I signed up to do a coaching course to try and be a little bit better at cricket. I played before. And then in the autumn of that year, kind of late autumn, the local newspaper just carried a little snippet of an article. And a young man called John Fletcher was asking people if they fancied having a go at playing baseball. So about 10 of us kind of appeared at his flat one evening and sat down and kind of decided, with absolutely no knowledge whatsoever of what we were getting into, that we'd have a go at playing, and we thought we'd enter the British Baseball Federation league. So early the next year, we started to practice, and a gentleman called Paul Raybould, who's a bit of a legend in his own right in terms of baseball and pitching, came down and gave us a session of practice and showed us kind of some rudiments of the game. And we played for the first time in 1993, and that was in the Southern Conference, Division 3 East of the Federation, and we played for a couple of years. But really, what really captured my interest was learning about the game, and nobody else really was showing that much interest in coaching. So I tried to learn a bit about the game and tried to pass that knowledge on to other people. So for a couple of years we played, and then I in '95, I decided to kind of transition from my role and my job as an engineer into, I really wanted to try and get into sports development, and particularly, you know, baseball development, if that was possible. So I was kind of in the middle of transitioning from one career into another, kind of via the leisure industry. But before I kind of actually managed to find a job, I was setting up a schools program around Bracknell schools. And kind of at the last minute, just before I was going to start doing that, wouldn't you know it, I get offered a job. So my wife suggested very gently that I take the job because we needed some money. So I did, but in order to cover the schools program, I contacted Ian Smythe at the BBF, who was the coaching coordinator, and said, I need some help. I've set this up, but what can I do? So he sent me a Major League Baseball coaching envoy, and that was a program. I don't know if that's been mentioned to you before. It was a program whereby coaches, young coaches from America, were sent over here, paid for by Major League Baseball, in order to try and develop the game, not just in Great Britain, but in Europe and other places around the world. So I was sent this gentleman called Vince Garcia, who you've interviewed, and he stayed with us for the summer, stayed with Michelle and I and the kids. And probably, I mean, I don't know, I'd estimate, I don't know, 90% of what I know about baseball I learned from Vince that year and in the next couple of years. And it was just, I don't know, almost like a perfect storm, really. He was incredibly influential over me and my knowledge of baseball and what we did at Bracknell. And I just soaked up what he told me like a sponge. So it's all his fault, really. So from that point onwards, I was involved in baseball and still am involved in baseball. So that's been a long time. With the club and with Great Britain programs, and with Baseball Softball UK and the BBF, and a number of other things that I've probably forgotten about.
I'll try and remind you of some of the things that you sent over to help me with today's interview. You've
Sure.
got quite an impressive list of achievements. I just want to go back a little bit there, if we could. So, what was it about baseball then that made you want to leave a career in engineering and pursue it as a project?
Well, I think it was. I mean, I say the club had been set up for a few years, and we'd actually visited some schools. The second year that we played, so we played in '93, and we finished with a 6-6 record in the division we were playing in. And we asked the BBF, we didn't finish top of that division, but we asked the BBF if we could go up to the next division. And they said yes. So we thought, right, well, really, we need a manager, really. We need somebody that kind of knows what they're talking about. And we'd set our sights pretty high. You know, we didn't want to mess about. We decided that, I mean, it's in our constitution that our aim is to win the national championship. So we wrote to the baseball magazine in those days, which was run by Kevin McAdam and Wendy. And we wrote this letter and just said, oh, you know, we want a manager. They published the letter, and next to our letter on the letters page was a letter from a gentleman called Ivan Stroud asking if there were any baseball teams in England who needed a baseball manager and a baseball coach. So we kind of met up and hit it off, and Ivan came with me into some of the schools that we did. I mean, that must have been '93. And yeah, I mean, as to exactly what it was about baseball, I'm not sure. But yeah, it was a combination of things, really. And I've been an apprentice at a company called Ferranti. Now, I know Ferranti used to have some buildings and some works up in Manchester around with the Wythenshawe area.
Yeah.
So I've done an apprenticeship, an old-fashioned 4-year apprenticeship with studying at college, and I'd done some really quite interesting work commissioning first-of-class systems for naval ships and things like that. And then I kind of fell into a pool of engineers that were looking after, again, some other quite interesting subjects. We worked on some navigation and display systems for airships that were at the time being touted as a solution for policing and things like that. And that was all really exciting. But when that all kind of finished, when those projects went away, I was kind of dumped back into a pool of engineers that were looking at, some pretty mundane stuff, really. So my interest in baseball kind of coincided with like a downturn in my interests in engineering. And again, it was kind of, right place, right time, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't really know whether I would be able to find a paid role. They were very, well, I mean, almost non-existent in those days. And yeah, so I guess I didn't really know what was out there in terms of that. But I kind of thought the best thing to do was probably to move from what I was doing into leisure management, and then maybe there was an option to kind of get involved with sports development from there. So that's what I did. So the job I was actually offered was working as a leisure attendant at a local hotel. And then from there I moved on to something else. So yeah, I mean, it was something different. There was obviously a lot to learn. And it struck me, I think, that was the case at the time. Lots to learn, lots to pass on. And yeah, it was probably quite a challenge. At that point, I had sort of grand ideas of, building a facility and managing it and managing to live on that, obviously. But at the time, that just wasn't feasible at all.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever see anything like the Envoy program again in British baseball?
I think there's a possibility. I mean, I think it was something that was very successful. There's been a number of programs that have come to Great Britain. Schools programs and youth league programs, both of which I've had some involvement in. But I think there's no question that I think somebody else mentioned this on one of your shows. If you put an American voice in front of a group of school kids, they can say exactly the same thing as you or I might say, but they'll be listened to a lot more. Yeah. And yeah, I think that element was great. I think there was some. I think that almost the difficulty is that the envoys are really good at generating enthusiasm and interest, but somebody's got to kind of pick that up. And if that interest is piqued, then yeah, absolutely, the kids can carry on and go to a club and enjoy what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, we also found, I think, that having somebody with the level of knowledge that Vince had was just, I mean, like I say, I just tried to soak up everything that he told me like a sponge. And he introduced me to working with the Great Britain programs, and eventually we set up the academy and worked with that. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a fantastic program. I know there's some organisations who kind of do their own version of it. They can get young players over from the States to play with them, and those players can go into schools, and Bracknell did that as well. Some high school kind of guys that came over and stayed in homes with people and went into schools and enthused the kids around the area, which definitely worked for us, without a doubt.
And what sort of things can you tell us then? With you said you weren't involved in the GB setup. And was that through Vince directly, or how did that come around?
Well, it's kind of introduced by Vince. Vince got involved with the GB programs, and kind of dragged me along with him, really. The order of stuff kind of gets a bit mixed up in my mind, but
I'm just really looking over it now. You got like under 16s to 18s, 13s to 15s. So yeah, it's a lot of like different age groups.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
all different positions.
I worked with the juniors for most of the time. I was involved with the national team, so that's the under 18s. I mean, the first time I went away with them, I went on a couple of weeks' notice really, because the gentleman who was looking after it unfortunately wasn't able to go. So we went to Düsseldorf in Germany, and played in what was then called the A pool. It's now called the championship pool. And I think I might be mistaken about the dates, but I know Gavin Marshall, who's spoken to you, talked about securing a place at the A pool, and I'm not quite sure if that was his time or if that was a little bit before. But yeah, so that was an A pool that we went to in Düsseldorf. And we were relegated from that tournament, and then went to Namur in Belgium. And I think Vince came to Düsseldorf, but then wasn't able to come to Namur. But Kevin McAdam came with me as the general manager of both of those squads. So yeah, it's I mean, I remember some fantastic experiences with those trips, and I think we were kind of up against it a lot of the time in terms of the experience that our players had. We were playing against players who were playing quite a lot of games each year, and some of our players played very little and played in youth baseball, but not in adult baseball. So I think it's that's all kind of interesting. I think J-Rod is doing a fantastic job with the legends and getting those young players an opportunity to play, and it's something that we work quite hard to try and get to happen back in the early 2000s in order to get the kids the experience that they needed.
Yeah.
And we always came away from tournaments thinking, yeah, no, they need more experience of playing, and seeing a curveball for the so they don't see a curveball for the first time when they go and play in those tournaments. So yeah, it was again lots and lots of good experiences and super memories of working with those young players, and of course a couple of those young players were Will Linton and Liam Carroll, who have gone on to wonderful things since then.
Yeah, I've heard of them before, those two lads.
Yeah, which is that's obviously lovely to see.
Yeah, what were your highlights then from your GB days?
Well, I think there's obviously successes that you can point to. I think it was in 2004. I was assistant coach on the program that played in Antwerp, in Belgium, that won the B pool under Tom Gillespie's stewardship, and that was quite a fantastic achievement, really, to win that and get promoted to the championships the next year, which I also went to. But yeah, I think the whole thing really, the setting up of the academy, which, to the best of my knowledge, it was myself and Vince and Kevin McAdam. I think Ian Smythe had some involvement in that too, was great. And the days, the weekends really that we used to spend at Upper Hayford, which was an old US Army, Air Force base,
yeah,
were great. Working with the kids as much as we could. We would run an academy session one day with as many kids as turned up, and then we'd run a junior session on the Sunday. So, and we had to stop when we stayed in the gym at Hayford. So everybody slept in the gym on little camp beds and put you up beds and sleeping bags and things like that. I read an article the other day about when that closed, which brought some memories back of that. Yeah, I mean, I think my main memories really are of the people that I met when we played in Sweden. I made very good friends with their head coach and the guy that ran their academy, Tony Klarberg, who I still keep in touch with. And as I say, I think if you go from the first tournament that I went to with the juniors was in '99, and then in 2010 we went to Atnang Puchheim in Austria, and Liam came with me as my assistant coach. So that kind of went full circle, if you like.
Yeah.
And then I believe Will was also on that trip. Yes, he was. He was a young player, 15-year-old player, came on that trip. And when we went, the last time I went away with the junior squad was when they went to Florida for a US AAA tournament. And Will, I believe, was the head coach on that trip. And I kind of knew that at that point they'd learned enough. They knew enough. They knew far more than I did about how to coach and manage our game. And it was just the right time, I think, for me to step back and, not let them have the reins, because it was probably going to happen anyway. But it wasn't a question of me letting anybody do anything. They were in a position to do it and do a better job than I was.
Was it a difficult decision to make then, or did you just trust
it wasn't. I knew what, I knew how much they knew. My son played for a lot of the time on the Great Britain junior squad. I'm trying to think when he would have first started. It would have been about '09, I think, maybe '08. And he was aging out as well. So that was a contributory factor. I'd have been quite happy to carry on if I felt I was the right person. And of course, I coached and managed before he was old enough to play on that squad. But yeah, and I don't think it was really, no. I think as people talk about burnout a little bit with baseball and coaching, especially in the UK, and I was. I think it was probably just the time for me to stop and take a little bit of a step back. My daughter had a couple of young children, so it was just the right time for me to kind of step back and spend a little bit more time with them, and let other people do the fantastic job that they've done since.
Awesome. So with your involvement spanning like 30 years within British baseball, are there any unique challenges that you faced then that you don't really see now?
What, back then?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, yeah. Well, the first thing that occurs to me is from an organisational point of view. There was no internet. There was no smartphones. So you had to kind of make all sort of arrangements on the telephone or at practice, the week before. It wasn't. It's not like we were sending up smoke signals or anything like that. But obviously, things are a lot more. They're a lot easier nowadays with social media and what have you. I don't really think that much else has changed. I think probably with social media and there's a lot more things that young people especially can do with their time nowadays, and I think other coaches probably will agree. You're fighting against those things all the time to keep young players interested and committed. I think commitment levels probably, and as I've just described, I think there are reasons why commitment levels have dropped. There's just so many other things for people to do. So I think, thinking back, I think in our first season we probably used about 15 players. That's probably something that would be very difficult to do nowadays. But I think that the challenges are probably very similar in terms of publicising what you're doing and making sure people know about it. 30 years, as you say, almost 30 years into the existence of our clubs, people still go, "Oh, I didn't know there was baseball in Bracknell." And you go, "Well, yep, there is."
It's funny you should mention that, because when we arrived at the Battle for Britain this weekend, we got to where the sat nav had told us where, even though like a mile away from where we were, we pulled up at this gate, and this fella got out. I pressed something in the comments or something. So I wound the window down, and I shouted over to her and said, "Right, mate, do you know where the baseball field is?" He went, "What baseball field?" And we were literally on the car park for the field.
Right.
And it's just like, oh, come on, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's again, I think social media has made things a lot easier in terms of telling people what's going on and where they can play, and diamond finders and that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
like I said, back when we started, John got this little message out in the newspaper, and that newspaper doesn't exist anymore. Everything's online. I mean, I used to deliver that newspaper, so it's a bit weird in terms of that sort of thing, that it's not there anymore. But yeah.
So I was going to ask what you do now. You sort of retired from baseball, but that question doesn't apply to you because you're still playing a bit now, aren't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I play softball now, and I thoroughly enjoy that, and I coach that too. Anybody that wants to talk to me and that will listen to me about playing and getting better, I still love doing that. I've played. You're right. I've played a little bit this year because Sarah Daughtry at Home Plate at Farnham Park has been organising some turn up and play games.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks we did of that, and that was great fun. I managed to pitch a little bit, and I caught a little bit, and met with some old friends like Earl played, Mike Catterbowl, who was on the Bracknell Blazers championship team in 2009, turned up. John Boyd turned up. So that was that was a lot of fun, and it was really cool because we were able to get some newcomers involved in the game as well. So and get some people some experience of pitching and doing some other things which otherwise they wouldn't have got.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a little bit of baseball, and I've my niece Jessica Vernon has been playing some baseball and has been learning how to pitch. So I've been with her a couple of times to a couple of Bracknell games, and probably made a bit of a nuisance of myself telling the guys things that they could do a little bit better. But yeah, so I've kind of kept my hand in a little bit this year, and as you know, as you mentioned, I run a little virtual practice for anybody that wants to come along and have a go every Tuesday evening, and we've done that right through lockdown. And it's I don't know. Some people say it's limited what we can do, but we can do stuff. We can practice different things.
Something's better than nothing.
Yeah, and I think the skills, the drills that we've been doing, I think are really useful. I mean, I've noticed the real difference in my shoulder and my strength and agility through doing the things that we've been doing, and I feel a lot more confident about playing. I'm reaching an age where I probably should think about stopping, but it's just so much fun, and if I can look after myself, I'll carry on for as long as I can.
Yeah, you can't stop us. This 5 pages of notes here has got to become a novel at some point. I won't be happy until this is in hardback.
Yeah.
There's one thing that's highlighted on here that I want to touch on as well. We're talking about coaching.
Yeah.
In 2001, you were involved with San Francisco Giants Instructional League Camp as part of the MLB International Coaching Development Program.
I was, yeah.
How did you get involved in that?
Again, I think kind of right place, right time. Really, the MLB were running that program for coaches in Europe, and they offered a couple of places to British coaches. And yeah, I mean, as I just started and been involved with the GB programs for a few years, and obviously made an impression on whoever made the decision that perhaps I should go. I went with Gary Roberts, who at the time was the senior squad head coach, and we spent 2 weeks with the San Francisco Giants Instructional League, with their coaches, their roving coaches who would come in, people like Willie McGee, people like Lee Smith, who at the time was like the all-time saves leader. We got on really well with him. We ended up going out to dinner with him one evening, and we walked into this restaurant, which I dare say he knew about, and they knew him. But we walked into this restaurant, and there was lots and lots of baseball memorabilia all around the wall. And the first signed baseball we came to was a Lee Smith signed baseball. It was kind of really, really strange. And then we just sat down and we just shot the breeze with him. He was just a really, really nice guy. But yeah, I think we learned a lot. I learned a lot from that week. We watched the pitchers getting ready. We watched them throwing ball pens. We watched, all of the information that those coaches passed on to those young players who were kind of, they'd just been signed. They'd obviously shown some evidence of talent, but they needed to be kind of told how the game worked and what their role was within the game, and kind of fine-tune stuff, because they were so athletic and so good. They probably had found that where they'd gotten to fairly easily, and now they were in the show, and they really needed to kind of knuckle down and work hard to improve their skills. So yeah, it was so much fun. We'd be up early, we'd be at the field, we'd watch, and to be honest with you, get involved in their practices. They let me hit fungos one day, which was to the infielders, which was kind of neat.
Yeah.
And then we watch the games, and then we'd suit up. We would go and watch them play against another instructional league team in the afternoon. It was, stuff of dreams, really. That was a really good couple of weeks. The main thing I brought away with me was that, the stuff that we were doing, the stuff that I'd been taught to do with our young players was what they do. So the basic stuff was, I came away a lot more confident about what I was doing with the young players that we were working with, because that's what they were doing there.
That's cool.
So it was a great experience.
Awesome.
Really good.
Did you meet any names there? You want to name drop anyone?
I mentioned Lee Smith and Willie McGee. We were trying to pick the brains of coaches, really, and there was a gentleman there by the name of Joey Amalfitano, who'd been involved in baseball. Now I'm guessing I've probably got it written down somewhere, but like 50 years of involvement in baseball. And we knew that he base coached. So I kind of said to him, would you mind, could you just give me some pointers on base coaching, whatever time you've got. And he chatted away, and he told us all about, freezing on a line drive, and told us that he had different signs for different players, because some players are not very clever. So he had to have different sign systems for them. The time flew by, but after about 45 minutes, he said, "That's about all I can tell you." And I was like, "Well, that's incredible." That was just so good of him to spend that time talking to us about all the different things that could possibly happen. That was kind of a special moment. Very, very generous gentleman.
Yeah, it's great to see that those. It's the same with it. It's like people involved that I've spoken to. I'm yet to meet anyone or speak to anyone that thinks that they're above the station. It's such a pleasure to chat with people, and I think when you see people that you kind of idolize within a game, and they're just as level-headed as you are, and just as talkative, it just adds an extra layer to.
Someone said to me some time ago, or I heard somebody, or perhaps in an interview or something, we're trying to make our players as good as they can be, and we're trying to make them as good, that they need to be. We want them to be good people as well as good baseball players.
Yeah.
And if I help to make your player and your team a better player and a better team, I've got to make my player a better player and a better team. So the challenge is there all the time to make people as good as they can be. If I speak to somebody and try and make them better, it just means that I've got to keep looking for ways to make my players better, and so it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, So what motivates you and keeps you going then at this sort of stage? Because you're still involved. Like I said, you could easily just hung your cleats up and rode it out. So how you keep yourself on top of your game?
I'm not really sure I know what to do with myself, to be honest. I mean, I just love working with people who want to work and who want to get better. And you know, I'm thankful that we've got a few players like that that play softball and they want to get better. And yeah, if I can pass on some of my knowledge to some of those players, then that's great. And it's, yeah, I mean, I like hitting the ball, I like fielding the ball and throwing the ball, and you know, being involved in a athletic endeavour. And yeah, I mean, I just still have loads and loads of fun with it. I must admit, I listened to the show with J Rod and Chris Ward today, and I got so excited about what J Rod was talking about, because it's stuff we've taught players before, but it's kind of something which everybody needs to understand and buy into. I think if our game is going to get better, just the simple ideas, the 9 to 5 idea, and you know, I've always told players that they should put their gloves in the same place, and somebody shouldn't have to walk all the way into the dugout to go get their glove. If they're on, you know, first base, they shouldn't have to walk all the way to the third base side to get gloves. And that's not, you know, I mean, I was taught that was the right thing to do, and understand why. You know, it just speeds the game up, and you know, you're much better off playing, especially, I mean, single A, which is what Bracknell played this year. The games are timed, so you know, get as much time on the field actually playing baseball as you can, and cut down on the time in between innings. And yeah, that was really, you know, it kind of, I was thinking, right, I need to kind of talk to the softball team about this, because softball is not always the speediest game. It's quick, you know, it's quicker in terms of, you know, people put the ball in play a lot more often, so you get a lot more opportunities to make plays. But you know, it's very much a, I don't know, I think people could get on and off the field a little bit quicker. Let's put it that way.
For a moment, then I thought you were going to talk about the Matrix, but I'm glad you mentioned that bit.
Yeah. I'm sure that made a lot of sense. I don't know the last time I saw that film, so my wife will probably tell me we saw it about 3 weeks ago, but I don't I don't know when I saw it last.
Do you have a favourite baseball movie or sports movie?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, in terms of baseball, I've got to echo what the guys said on that show. The Sandlot is a super film. But I think my favourite, I still consider it to be, it's a sports film. I like The Hoosiers with Gene Hackman. It's got something else here, I think, but that's a super film. Just about, I mean, what was it? He had 5 players at practice and one of them misbehaved, so he sent him home. And you know, that's there's, I don't know that that's necessarily the right way to coach, but certainly it kind of worked in that situation, because his dad brought him back because he wanted him to play, and the kid started to listen. But yeah, I like that film. I mean, Barbara Hershey's very gorgeous as well, but yeah, it's that's a nice film. Lots and lots of good films. They also talked about A League of Their Own, didn't they? Which was a fantastic film.
Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah,
cracking movie. Going to move on about. I'm going to play a little game with you. So let me switch to my spreadsheets. The Moneyball's one of my favorite ones because it's about analytics and baseball. So I'm a spreadsheet monkey. That's why
lovely. I like a good spreadsheet.
So I'm going to mention some names to you, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind about them. Not so much their playing ability, but what kind of people they are. Okay. So I've been poking around. I've got some names from some people.
Okay, yeah, it'll be interesting.
So Vince Garcia.
Yeah, well, Vince. Again, I mean, I said before, just a huge influence on my, not just my baseball career, but on my life. I'm still really close to Vince. I went actually to see him last year. The opportunity arose to go and see him around New York. And so I took that opportunity. He'd flown over from Nevada with a team of players to play in a tournament out that way. So it was really, really lovely to spend a day with him out in New Jersey. I was also really lucky that I managed to tie up with another good friend of mine, Dave Phillips, who was also out there at the time, who's also had a big influence on my career and on my life. So that was really good. But yeah, Vince is the main reason that I do what I do today, and that I did what I did with baseball. Very, very influential.
Yeah. I think if I could record again with any guest, it would probably be Vince.
I bet it would be, yeah.
Because when I first started off doing it, I literally was down to like 30 minutes worth of time. And I think it's like maybe the fourth person I've done, and now I'm into I'm pushing nearly 50 episodes. I feel a bit more comfortable with it and knowing what I know. I think if I had an opportunity to speak to Vince again,
as you know, he's very shy and retiring, so you probably would have a bit of trouble getting him back on, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Next name I've got for you is Tom Gillespie.
Tom, another very, very good friend. Tom took over from Vince as the game development director in the UK, Tom is a fantastic guy. Full on when he played. Again, I think it's kind of a measure of a friendship when you go and visit somebody and they come and visit you. And Tom's out in Hamburg now, married with a couple of lovely children. And Michelle and I go and see them whenever, as often as we can. Every 2 or 3 years, we'll try and get out there to see them. And whenever Tom gets an opportunity to be in the UK through his job as a scout, an MLB scout, we catch up. Again, I think a huge influence on the game in this country, as Vince was, a great man.
Awesome. Next name I've got is Luke Russell.
Luke Russell. Luke was a student at East Hampstead Park School when we first started the program in Bracknell, really. And it kind of ties into the other guy that I just mentioned there, Dave Phillips. Dave was, I don't know, the best way to explain or describe him would be he was a USophile. So there's probably an official name for that, but he loved all things about the US and dreamed of living in America and applying his trade as a teacher there. So I'll come back to him in a sec, but Luke was a student at the school and was probably, I think, one of Bracknell's first young superstars. We did lots and lots of work with the school. They took part in lots and lots of different activities and programs, the pitch hit and run program. So some of their kids got sent up to, again, I think that was Hull, to the European Championships when they took part in like the national pitch hit and run finals. But Luke very quickly became very proficient at the game and proficient as a pitcher, and started playing on the Bracknell adult team. Got selected to the Great Britain squads, and I mentioned, I think, the '99 tournament in Dusseldorf. Luke was on that squad, and I'm pretty sure, again, this is where my memory is really, really bad. I know he pitched a fantastic game. I'm not sure if the team won the game, but pitched a fantastic game in in that tournament. He took the very brave decision at the time. Other players kind of did around him to go to America and study and play. He met a lovely girl and married her, and has got a couple of lovely kids out there. I was just messaging him earlier in the week to see how things were going for him. Worked so hard on his game at Bracknell, Yeah, kind of. He played with Liam. It was that sort of age group when they played together. Yeah, super young man.
And speaking of Liam, here's the next name on the list, Liam Carroll.
Liam. I was speaking to Liam earlier on actually about some of the things. Liam. What an incredible journey he's had in the sport. And he first came to Bracknell. I'm guessing he was 12, 13 years old to play, but he used to travel from Crewkerne, like 3.5, 4 hours on the train. Would come up and stay with Michelle and I. He'd play youth baseball on a Saturday, and he'd play adult baseball on the Sunday, and then he would get the train all the way back down to Crewkerne. Yeah, I mean, he will have talked to you about his story. But yeah, incredible drive and passion for our game. That passion drove him to learn as much as he could, and make pretty big sacrifices really to be in the places that he's been to. And yeah, what an incredible job he did managing the Great Britain senior team. Yeah, fantastic coach. I mean, one of the best coaches I think this country has produced.
Yeah. Last name for you I've got is Willington.
Will and Liam I think of very synonymously, because they played around about the same time for Great Britain. Liam is just a little bit older, but Will has done the same thing. They're I kind of think of them as having very parallel journeys in terms of, they played when they were younger, and they went to the States and played and learned their craft as coaches and players, and have come back and have influenced the sport over here an incredible amount. Very proud of both of them and what they've achieved within our sport. And I think certainly pitching and catching are in very, very safe hands, if you'll pardon the pun. In Will, I've watched him coach some of the sessions that he did with the pitchers, because Jessica went along to be coached by him. And yeah, I mean, very, very exciting to listen to him talk to the players, and just so knowledgeable about pitching and catching. And one of I mean, you asked about proud moments. One of the proudest moments that I think I can remember is is going to watch the Great Britain team play in Holland a few years ago, and both of them coming up to me and after the game, and we had a super photograph taken, which I've still got on the wall.
Yeah, on your Facebook.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah,
nice picture.
Yeah, no, it was a super picture, and it was really, really kind of them to come and ask for that to be taken. Very, very precious to me.
Awesome. Will also said he wanted me to pass on his best, and he said that all of this is your fault.
Yeah, he tends to say that. I mean, I'm very proud of myself if he thinks that I played a part in the journey that he's made.
Yeah.
But he drove himself to do what he did, and to become as good as he's become as a coach. So yeah, I dispute it's all my fault.
Brilliant. Jessica also says that you've coached almost everybody and anybody, and played with everybody and anybody. So every time that she meets somebody, they always mention you. How would you like to be remembered once you've hung up your cleats? What sort of legacy do you want to be known to have left?
I don't know. I talked about Dave Phillips a little bit earlier, and when I saw him in in the States last year. We spent some really nice times together, just walking around New York and with Michelle and with Lynn. And we were just talking about coaching and teaching, because he's a professor now at Salisbury University. And he said, you know what, Paul, he said, I've figured all this out, this teaching and coaching business. He said it's just about loving people. And I think he was right. And I think, that's, I don't know, it's I don't know if it's a bit twee, but I think, I've not thought too much really about how I'd like to be remembered, but I just think just somebody that worked as hard as they could. I worked as hard as I could on the field with I think pretty limited capabilities, and over time I became better. I'd like to think I'm patient with people. I think that mistakes are an essential part of our game and an essential part of learning. But yeah, I think just somebody that's approachable, and if people ask me questions, I try and give them the best answers that I've got. So yeah, I just think that one quote kind of sticks with me from Dave. It was I think a fair reflection of our roles as a coach.
Cool. I did put the feelers out for some listener questions. I had a couple come back in. Joel Watkins said, Bracknell is a rare example of a club that's grown to offer the holy grail of both youth and adult baseball and softball. How have you achieved this, and what's your advice to clubs wanting to expand their appeal?
Well, my advice to clubs to do that is to find people who can help you to do it. I was involved with youth programs at Bracknell, and we had some success when I did that. But I think we had some other very good coaches back then, but that oversaw some of the national championships that we achieved. I think you need people to do things, and I think we're really happy and really lucky at Bracknell that we've got people who will look after stuff. Jack looks after the baseball, and Jessica looks after the youth programs that we run, and I support them both as much as I can. But it's that's their babies, and softball is appealing to me at the moment because I can play that, and after an hour and a half of baseball, that's probably about enough for me. So I don't know. I think what I've been involved in through my career is what I wanted to be involved in, and the time was right, and there were people around to take some pressure off. So when I did want to have an involvement with the youth teams at Bracknell, because that's when my son was the right age to do that. Somebody was there. Rob Rance was there to look after the Blazers, and eventually, of course, lead them to the national title in 2009. And when I wanted to move on from those youth teams, there were people there, Andy Rose, who were happy to kind of take that role on and lead that with Jean Remillard. So it was, I think perhaps our club has been fairly lucky that those people have been around at the right time. And as I say, with our softball program and with our committee, we've got some super people on the committee that the club can trust to look after the money and make sure everybody's safe, and to run our meetings. So yeah, you just have to surround yourself with good people, and you have to trust them to do what you need them to do. And kind of be on hand to give advice as and when they want it, and of course sometimes when they don't.
Will actually contributed a couple of questions too. It says, you're involved in the heyday of youth baseball programming, specifically in planning and delivering pitch, hit and run in schools and play ball. What elements of those programs should British baseball embrace and try to bring back to make youth baseball really thrive?
Yeah, I mean, I think those programs were really good. I think the key to the success of those programs, though, is I think having having people that want to run them. And that, I mean, that sounds, I think, probably might be fairly simple, but if, for example, you're going to put a program into a school, I think it works for a little while if you're then going to invite those children from the school along to a club environment. And once they're in the club environment, if they enjoy it, then they'll stay. And of course, if you introduce the game to enough children, then you're gonna make that happen. I think the key for me probably is if there's a schools program, I think the schools need to buy into it, and the schools need to lead the delivery of it. Because it's great. You were talking about the Envoy program and things like that. You know, it comes back to the same thing. If as a local coach you go in and deliver that program, and then you then leave that program, somebody's got to pick it up. So I kind of think the key really is to excite people within those delivery environments, and want them to carry on doing that when you're not doing it anymore, or when you've decided to move on to another school. And that's not an easy thing to achieve, because I mean, in schools, the pressure that teachers are under to deliver the things that they have to deliver, they're under immense pressure all the time, and do an incredible job of what they do. So, you know, but I think for me, that's the key really to successful programs like that is having somebody to run it. And that's kind of what happened with East Hampstead Park School in Bracknell and Dave Phillips. Dave loved delivering those programs and loved teaching the kids to play baseball. We'd run lunchtime baseball leagues and things like that, which were fantastic to go and see. But yeah, it's somebody excited enough to want to deliver it and continue to deliver it.
Awesome. He also asks, you've been around amazing coaches. What are 2 or 3 lessons that have stuck with you over time?
I think keeping things simple. I think positive feedback is invaluable. And one of my favorite books is a book called Positive Coaching, which I'd show you, but my niece has borrowed it, and so she's got it at the moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think being positive, and I think more recently I've really embraced the idea that mistakes are just essential to the way we learn, and you know they're almost to be celebrated. And I think that's something that's very important to me. And I, as I say, I'll mention that podcast again with J Rod and Chris Ward. The stuff that J Rod was talking about, really simple stuff to establish a philosophy for your club, and to get people to understand what baseball can do for them, in terms of, you know, a bit of discipline and supporting other people in really simple ways. Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty key things. And yeah, and I mean, friendship is a huge thing that I've benefited from through the sports. Just I mean, so many names that I'll probably, there's people I probably should have mentioned that I haven't, and probably could spend another show talking about.
That's decent. That's really good. I was going to ask something a bit similar to what Will asked, and it's with all the experience and knowledge that you've gained over time, is there any advice that you would give to players and coaches?
Have fun. I mean, I think that's you know, if you're having fun, then you'll learn better, and you'll play better. And I think the other thing that I think is really important that I talk to younger people about is that you've got a long career. You know, you're not going to be perfect right now, but you can take a step today to be better, you know, in whatever you're doing. So if you can take that step and commit to finding a way to be better every day, then those little steps are going to add up, and you're going to be, you know, as time goes on, you're going to be better. And whatever experience you have, you're going to be a better person and a better baseball or softball player. So yeah, patience, fun, and yeah, I think they're the two things that spring to mind right now.
Awesome, thank you. One last question for me before I'll leave the last word to you. One that I like to ask all of my guests is, if you had one wish for British baseball, what would it be?
I think it would be for the entire community to be united and to support each other. There's some incredible work going on right across the country in baseball clubs, and it would be good to see those efforts united and everybody working together for a common cause.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the last word, as always, is open to the guests. So Paul Vernon, thank you very much for coming on the show. Any last words, any shout outs, any parting advice?
Well, I think I'd just like to say thanks to you, Matt, because I think through this podcast we have a really good chance of achieving what I just talked about. I think that there's an incredible spirit of cooperation and amongst the people that you've had on to talk to, all of who are incredible characters, and I think if everybody kind of feels that the same way as the people that have spoken to you, then I think baseball's got a really bright future. So yeah, hats off to you for doing what you're doing and continuing to do what you're doing.
Thanks, Paul. That means a lot. Thank you. That's from that. So, yeah. So
I'm not crying. You're crying.
yeah, I'm just making lasagna, chopping onions. Yeah. Well, thank you very much again. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and I really appreciate it. And that's all from me. So, Paul, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
I'll chat to you soon. And I'll see you on Tuesday.
Good stuff.
Take it easy. Ta-ra.